or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey everybody, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, host of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes. I hope I am on air, I hope that my bumper is over as well. So anyway, today I was supposed to have Jordan Maxwell on, but I think something has happened. Tried to contact him this morning and to no avail, so we really hope Jordan is okay. And I will try to be checking in with him a little bit later. So that means that I'm in a solo situation. I may drag Lenny Time on for a while. Today is March 2nd, 2019, and Carrying Stones and Digging Holes is at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm on the West Coast, so I'm coming on at 10 a.m. The show is on Saturdays. So anyway, let's see. So I have to kind of come off and try to produce something interesting today. So first, let's get through the funding. So you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can click on our funding page, and it has all kinds of ideas and ways that you can help us, since we are listener supported here at Revolution Radio. All of our hosts and everybody that brings the networks and shows together all volunteer their time to enlighten and educate you listeners out there. So please find a way to help support us. Also, if you're on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, you can go to the schedule area. I find that the schedule area on the left-hand side of the page works the best, and you have a choice between Studio A and Studio B. Go to that Studio A, click on that, scroll down to the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, click on the B, and you will find bio information on myself and the show, and contact information if you want to contact me. All right. Let's see. So I thought maybe since I I was going to have Jordan Maxwell on. I was just trying to think about something that I could teach. So one of the things I'm working on, sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied, because sometimes, when you have to pull off a show at the last minute, you weren't really prepared. So one of the things that I've been working on, doing a video on my YouTube channel, and so we'll put that out there, is Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project YouTube channel. One of the things that I've been working on is putting together a video. I've been trying to add some health videos and nutrient videos and things that are health related. Lately, I end up doing a lot of people's shows, so a lot of the work that I do with nutrition and health usually gets on other people's shows and doesn't really get on my YouTube channel that much. So I was thinking, and I've never done anything like this before on radio, so I'm not really sure, how it's going to come out, but wanted to talk about maybe the first part of the show, teach a type of healing technique. A healing technique that, let me see if I can get out of this page. A healing technique that I was taught by a teacher, native teacher, that I had when I was 23, who I apprenticed with. And she worked, her background story was she willingly left her reservation and her people at a very young age. She was born a little more light complected than her family or tribal community, and so there was always a bit of issues with her growing up. She said that she always felt kind of insecure and like she didn't belong. But she had, outstanding abilities. And so there was a time period where people from NASA, I believe, were trafficking her reservation and picked up on her, and so she was easily led away from the reservation and her people, and to go work with, we're just going to call it NASA, because it doesn't matter whether it's a subgroup or whatever. And I always try to remind people out there that NASA's really never been a space program, that NASA has been a human a organization that does human trafficking for certain kinds of humans with abilities. For example, people that can remote view, shamans, a lot of these kinds of things. And so she ended up starting to work with NASA and scientists, and she worked with the first biofeedback that was made. And so she worked primarily with that when she was really young, and it helped her to develop her abilities. And during the time frame of this, remember, this is an old story, and so I don't, I'm trying to get all of the particulars together kind of in a short way here. So she ends up working with a biofeedback machine, and she's healing people. A lot of them were scientists that had all kinds of issues because they had messed around with different kinds of things, different heavy metals and radiation. And she said that there were a lot of them that were pretty sick. And so she started kind of syncing up with the biofeedback machine, and it started to kind of take her to different, energy healing places. And so there was this period, she got married and had kids while she was working for the NASA people. And her husband like died. And she never really talked to me about how he died. And, I never really asked. But, sometimes, I know, or we know out there when we're dealing with, a lot of this, whatever we want to call it, MK Ultra, NASA, government, getting people to be, biological weapons. Because obviously if you have the gift to heal energetically, you also have the gift to kill. So it goes both ways. And they always kind of wrap you in, engaging you more into the positive way, that you're saving, you're a hero, you're helping. And that's not eventually what they really want to use you for. So before I met the Lakota Sioux medicine woman, and I did an apprentice with her, I myself had been attempted kidnapping by NASA, because I'm different as well. And so, to be able to kind of hear her story a little bit really helped me. And I think the reason why because I was tough, I was pretty stubborn when I was young, and I'd had a lot of crazy things happen to me, that I couldn't find answers for. And so it made me feel borderline, mental. And so being involved with her really helped to me to kind of, I feel like she came at the perfect time in my life. We were connected up because I was just really confused about which world existed. And she really helped to integrate me in being able to multitask different realities and different worlds. And she helped to develop that, and helped me with really important medicine work energetically, and working on the 64-dimensional, whatever you want to call it, dimensions, layers, worlds, that expand out from, our physical energy field, our physical and, energy body. And that these 64 dimensions, all, or dimensions, I don't know, let's just call them rooms, 64 rooms. They have lots of different things and beings, and different layers of energy are housed in each one. And I still to this day don't really have a really good explanation for how all these rooms operate, and they all are different, but this is kind of a basic. So I think, when they talk a lot about, ascension, and I got 2 crazy kitties running around right now in the house, and then here comes my dog. She's going to get all jiggy. So this is interesting, like, what I'm talking about, and how crazy the cats are becoming, and it's kind of activating my dog too. So anyway, so one of the things that I've seen, I think that I can give people a base level foundation about these different planes or layers or worlds or dimensions or rooms. It's almost like sometimes when I do certain kind of work, they're all going crazy. I have to be like calming them down right now. All 3 of them. Oh, there's a cat fight. Okay. All right. The thrill and the excitement. No, you in here. Come on. All right. Lay down. All right. So anyway, sometimes when I'm doing this work and I have to go into the we'll call it the 64 layer field. It's almost like when I go into those fields to be able to figure out what's going on with somebody physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it's going to be. It's like I walk in to a high rise, right, that has 64 levels, and each level is a different level, and it has different, you know, some are 2 bedrooms, some are 3 bedrooms, some are, you know, you know, so I go up the elevator basically energetically, and then I start looking at the appropriate places to see if there is plugins, or if there's things unplugged, or you know, if there's things in those levels that should be there or should not be there. And usually they become pretty apparent if they're not supposed to be there. So that's kind of like how, sort of, kind of a foundation of understanding of a lot of the work that she taught me. And one of the things that I've seen is, for example, your physical liver. I've seen up to like 350 energies or plugins or beings, whatever you want to call them, entities or energy fields that can manage and caretake that liver. And the other thing too is that you know, as a person, you have an energy field, and if that energy field is really low, say your energy field is actually the power generator, and so it's like plugged into the 64 level, you know, condo building, and there are literally floors that can go dark because there's not enough energy in them to actually you know, run the lights and the computers and the kitchens and the appliances, and you know, and so this is kind of like trying to give you like a main physical idea of what that would be like. Not that I see apartments and condos, I see a lot of other different things, but this kind of gives you like an idea or a foundation of you know, what we would see in our everyday world that would be like or equivalent. I mean, it's like if you go into somebody else's apartment, and you know, you would notice if they didn't have furniture, and you would notice other kinds of things, and that's how a lot of these energies work. And then sometimes in the layer or the level plane, once you go in there, you may have to go through it, and sometimes out to some other spots, and then navigate your way back as you're journeying in there, trying to figure out what is ultimately going on with people in health. So that's the kind of like shamanism health work I was taught to do. She also taught me how to do a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And so one of the things that she taught me was about the hara line. And this was, mind you, 29 years ago. So it was long before there was internet. There was long before there was a lot of talk about the hara line. And so I'm going to give people kind of a practice or an idea on how to clean the hara line. So I've seen a lot of things online about people posting things like how to fix a broken hara line, how to, you know, I've never seen a broken hara line ever in 29 years of doing this kind of work. What I have seen is the hara line reminds me of a gutter, right? Like, you know, like a gutter along the house. Like if it gets really clogged with leaves and dirt and dead bird, or, all kinds of different things can clog up the gutter. And so it is a energy line that runs down through the top of your head, all the way down through your tailbone area, and then down into the ground. So it's sort of, let's just say it's kind of where the energy transmits through. It's your, two-way electrical communication device between the earth and the cosmos, or whatever you want to call it. But we'll get to, ideas on maybe how to clean that and clean it, and also what its relationship is to other things going on physically and energetically. Correlates. So I want to just go back to my teacher's story. And she, so her husband dies. And like I was talking about earlier, that this can be, programming. They can murder people around us, and they use kind of violent and aggressive and really serious emotional situations to sometimes gain more control over us. But this is the issue. Some of us, it heightens our awareness more in a way where we end up not being manipulated or controlled by those people who are trying to manipulate and control us and use us for their own, ill will or study. So what happens is her husband dies, and she goes through 2 years of sleep deprivation. Mind you, still working with the bio machines. By this time, also before her husband dies, she's at this point where she's like using the machine, but not really using the machine. She's communicating with, beings from, different planes of existence. And she's, healing them on site. And I'll tell you a story in a minute about like how amazing she was, and maybe still is. Let's see. So let me just write this down so I can remember. Okay, so what happens is that she ends up having 2 years of sleep deprivation. It just took her to a whole other level and plane of existence. And what started to happen was that she started to be able to read the minds of these people. And she started to realize that, looking through their minds and the history and everything else of who she was, where she came from, their point of view of the whole thing, what they were doing. She found out that they had machines that watched her and could watch her energy levels and stuff like that shift when she was working in session, that they all lied to her. They verbally lied to her, that they had no intentions of really ever letting her go, that they've been mind controlling her based on her own insecurity and how she felt like she didn't fit in with her tribe, and just like the whole 9 yards. And she was really quiet about the whole thing. And so as she, gleaned the story from each individual that she was around to put all the pieces together over a period of time, so she started to realize like they would probably never let her go, and that it wasn't going to be easy to leave, and she didn't really want to participate in, the situation anymore. So she devised a plan to get her kids out first, and then because she could read their minds, so she could tell if they were being triggered, because she was triggered. And so she had to keep it, low. And it took her a long time to be able to pull off like the whole escape. And so when I met her, I had moved because I needed a pretty severe change. And so I had moved to Washington State. And I ended up having this roommate who knew these other people who knew they were one of the households that would allow my teacher to come to their house and do sessions when she was in town. So I ended up, the next time she was in town, getting to be booked for a session. And that's kind of like when everything kind of changed. Her and I were so similar. I think she was like 20 years older than me. Our life paths were so identical. And it's because, we came, our, energy bodies or our spirit seed came from certain types of greenhouses in the universe that were similar. So normally I don't think that she would have taken on, she had a woman that helped her ground the clients. And I think I was the first kind of apprentice that she ever took on. And I don't know if she took on any more after that, but I think it was because she had a lot of the same similar things. And I think that it was more like an education or learning experience for her because we were so similar, and she had never seen another person that came from the same. I'm not saying that there aren't more of us, but we all have different seeds, and we've been grown in different greenhouses, and we end up coming here, or being actually, not coming here. A lot of us didn't come here willingly. A lot of us were harvested and kidnapped. But anyway, so that's kind of where I met her. And so basically what she would do is she would telepathically communicate. She traveled all over, like Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and worked on people periodically. And then she had a place way up in the mountains where, didn't have any technology or anything like that. So nobody could find her or knew where she was at. She, hey, no, hold on 1 second. You come over here. You guys are all just being really bad. You and the cats are being crazy. Come on. Always would happen, right? I got to do a show and they all decide to be very, very bad. All right. Anyway, so she would telepathically communicate. So we might not see her for a month or 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden, all of us that are involved with helping her, apprenticing with her, or working with her, would start getting messages. And then we would know that she was like coming the following week. And, all of us would get different kinds of messages. Some would get the day, some would get the date, time of arrival, and everybody would just put it together. And then all of a sudden, like the phones would start ringing at different locations where she would do the sessions. And we would start, booking appointments like right away. And it was pretty incredible situation. And I think I was like around 23 when this was going on. So one of the most incredible things that I ever witnessed, actually there was several off the chart things. And because there's that shamanism component, you're always being, basically scared to death. So, because I'm human and I have a brain and it has a shut-off valve, a lot of the situations when I was learning from her and dealing with a lot of the different kinds of beings and energies, I literally would shut off. Like the whole energy system would be so intense and strong that I would literally like just pass out like right in the chair. Or one time I was trying to escape the room to get out the door, and I just totally blacked out before I even like got to the door. But one of the most incredible things was the cancer. And so we had a lot of people that came to her, to be cured with, from cancer. And she would just, roll through the 64 layers, planes, whatever you want to call them, and find the components that were, causing the, the find the systems that, or, features that needed changed or shifting, and then go ahead and do that. And then would come back in. And then when she was back into the room, and then she would do it on the physical body. And she literally could reach into the energy field and pull out whatever it was after it had been shifted or unplugged or replugged or cleaned up. Then she could go in and take it out of the energy field. And a lot of times it would leave, whether it was memories or a tumor or all kinds of things, she would just reach into the energy field and pull it out. And so wherever she would pull it out in that energy field would leave, she didn't even touch people, and it would leave, a lot of bruising, especially people that had, implants, and maybe never ever got rid of the physical implant, but got rid of all of the energy and the attachments to the implants. And you would have bruising. I had that happen. She took out one of my tracking devices early on, and it was in my nasal cavity on my right side. And when she took it out, my whole face was black and blue for, 4 or 5 days, because she released the energy in the battery. And then what happens is the initial trauma that was done physically to my face, even though they hid it or concealed it, when they put the implant in there, but that kind of, damage comes up to the surface because it's taking you through the timeline and releasing it. So it was black and blue for quite a few days. But she one time removed this cancer tumor from this woman. And so she did all the stuff to clear it all up, and then, reached into the energy field and pulled out the cancer tumor. And literally, after that woman left, the next day she was going into the doctor to have a test to see, where her cancer is at or whether it's progressing or whatever else. And my teacher even told me, she said she's going to go to the doctor tomorrow, and she's going to, have no cancer in her bloodstream, and the tumor is going to be gone, and she's going to have a major miracle happen. The doctor is going to be able to face a miracle, that he's not going to be able to have terms or be able to handle or manage. And all these people that are around her going to witness this miracle, and they all will poo-poo it. And she said this woman that had the cancer tumor has been cured because of the people around her that are going to poo-poo it, is going to force her into victimization. And this is why she got the cancer in the first place, is that she has to have victimization to be able to participate in society, because this is how our society is run. And she will cause some other disease that may be even worse, because obviously on a deep level she can't cause cancer because she's been cured of cancer already. So she's going to cause something else. And sure enough, and I forget what was wrong with her, but sure enough, in 6 months, this woman came back with something completely different, but maybe more harsh, I think. And so, was constant. You get a miracle, something happens, and it's just kind of bizarre, but a lot of us live in that whole victimization. But yeah, I saw many people cured from all kinds of things, which doesn't surprise me. NASA wouldn't have wanted her, wouldn't have kidnapped her, wouldn't have manipulated her, or if she wasn't powerful. So, and she didn't put up with a whole lot of, crapola. And she was a very hard teacher. And she was very hard to emotionally, but it was the beginning of my journey of not projecting my stuff onto other people, and to be able to separate a lot of that stuff when I am working with people in sessions, to get a lot of my own stuff out of the way, so that I'm not projecting it or applying it onto them. Okay, so there's really cool. There's a lot of really cool things that she taught, and they were very, very native. The natives have a way of talking and how they express themselves, which is a lot different than, how I was taught. For example, one of my favorite lines is from Superman, S-U-P-A man, and he is a native guy who is like phenomenal, music phenomenal, and anybody should go look him up. But he has one rap song, I think it's called Gorilla, where he says, this is a totally perfect example, where he says in it, I broke my leg in 2 places, so I stopped going to those places, right? And that's kind of like typically kind of how my teacher, she would talk to me in kind of those kinds of, that kind of a way. One of the things she always said that, we want to take this massive journey. And she said it's like this, you could just, accept the right hand or accept the left hand. And the right hand would be, this major journey and this hero's journey, and you having to go out there and find yourself when you realize you're not out there anyway. And you go on these long, epic, whole lifetime journeys that, really are ones of self kind of also importance, and don't really matter to the community or the whole. And you can just spend lots of time on the right hand path. Or you could accept the left hand, which is where the God, the creator, you are one, right? So, or you can just accept that you are a co-creator in creation, in a relationship with the creator. And that's all you really need to know. And then just focus in on that path. So she used to remind me that a lot. Being a tough teacher, we went through this phase where I was kind of really high energy when I was younger, bounce off walls, in my natal chart, I have 5 placements in Sag. So super busy and super active. And most of my chart is fire, and the other part of my chart is air. So most of my life, I had very intense energy, and had to be kind of reined in, at certain periods of time, and taught how to rein in myself. So we went through a period when I was working with my teacher, where, I would show up at the house, ready to work, get to work, help her in these sessions. And she would, do the circle finger with the other fingers inside type muscle testing. And she would muscle test me from head to toe and not really say anything, not let me in to the house. She would meet me at the door. She would muscle test me from head to toe. She would look up and then she would say, you need to go home today. You need to go deal with your, stuff. Even though I had no skills on really dealing with my stuff. And so I would be thwarted off, and then I would go home and I'd literally cry hysterical for days because I really was wounded over the whole thing. And then just about the time that I came out of the wounding, and then she would, call me and say, okay, we'll come over and help out tomorrow or whatever else. And I would get there, and she would do different kinds of things too. Like, we had all kinds of different things in the house that were, that we would utilize. There would be 3 of us that would work on people. And, mostly her. And then, we would have off time in between to kind of rebalance. And so we would do a lot of things like she had, black and white mandala dittos sheets, and we had crayons and colors, and we would, color in these mandalas, meditation. There was always some really good healing food on the stove. So we'd come out of sessions, because some of these sessions would be 3 hours long. On average, at least 2 hours. So, you're working on, several people a day for several days. I mean, then you would get a break for a while. So you'd have to have all of these really important, nurturing, healing, type things or our necessities to help us with our, work that we were doing. And so, that we went through this long period where I just really emotionally had, a super hard time because I didn't really know what she wanted. And this was the whole point. She was trying to break me of having relationships with people based on what I thought they might want or what they need, or my projection of, them, instead, being able to come to the sessions clean with no, basically attachment to what goes on in the sessions, who's going to be there, what my teacher wants, what my teacher needs. And so she was breaking me of that by sending me home when I would show up in the morning to help out in the sessions. And over time, I started to kind of get to where I didn't have so much emotion around it. And then so what happened was it stopped happening as much, her sending me away, because I started to get kind of more in control about my choice about how I want to feel about myself in this world and how the world may affect me or not affect me. And choosing to stand in my power, maybe not so much stand in my power. I like stand in the center of my wheel, my medicine wheel, my personal medicine wheel, and a place of balance. I like that better than standing in your power, because, the thing is you have all these, new age, or you have all these spiritual, pieces of language that really don't tell people. I mean, the average person would be like, I don't really understand what standing in your power is. And it's almost like some of these statements are used to keep, average people out of that loop as well, which becomes kind of a little bit spiritual elitism that sometimes we have to, be careful about. Because there are people out there that are, hungry energetically and hungry spiritually and hungry, for new information and to take in new information. Okay, so I'm just going to give you some ideas on the hara line. So, and then we're going to finish up this first hour. And then maybe I'll talk about some more of my teachers into the second hour. So we have about, looks like about 11 minutes before we go into the first set of promos, or the first and the last set on my show. Okay, so I'm watching, there's a new Skype room for the host of the show, and so everybody's posting in it today. Which is kind of nice because it kind of helps bring us all together, which will be really great. I know there's a lot of hosts on Revolution Radio that I know nothing about and that I've never met, so it'll be great. All right, so let's talk about a few things. The abdominal seam. Let me see. I want to see if there is anything on here about the abdominal seam. Yeah, here we go. We've got a few images for abdominal seam. Okay, anyway, the abdominal seam, let's see what they're going to call it. Let's see, medical dictionary. Let's see if we can, just trying to see if we can find well, there isn't like a whole lot on here, so looks like there's more. Let's see, I have to find the right terms that they're going to decide to use, because that's one of the things that they do is they hide the language, right? All right, so they're talking about a lot of different seams, like this, you know, the seam and the seamless and the abdominal. Anyway, so there's like a seam that runs up more on the front that starts, you know, in the pubic area, right? And it runs all the way up. I think it runs all the way up into the rib cage. But since I can't seem to find, that's what I'm pretty sure that it does. So it's a seam that runs up. And one of the interesting things is that Roger Spur and I were talking about it last week on the show, and how, okay, so they have, if you go on his, you know, show Mud Fossils University YouTube channel, there's like whole videos on giant vagina rocks, and these are not rocks, they're actually giants, and they were female giants, and so their, you know, goods are there, and they're caves. And so he talked about that on last week's show. But so the seam goes, you can see it in the rock where the seam starts, and it goes up and through the body. So I was trying to see if I could find a definition for that, but it looks like mostly they just have, yeah. So just trying to, it doesn't really look like they have a whole lot here on the abdominal seam. And it looks like some of the pictures are cesarean kind of cuts. But there. So yeah, okay, so one of the things that you can really see the abdominal seam is like, you know, when somebody's pregnant, and they'll have like a dark line running down from, you know, the bottom of their pubic bone all the way up through their skin, right? Up into the diaphragm. Is sometimes you can see it that way, or like if people have like a major six-pack, you might see that line that goes straight up. That six-pack. Okay, so abdominal seam. Also the spine, right? So you've got the abdominal seam. You've got the spine, right? The hara line. Right? So we're not going to include the chakras, right? Because those are different kinds of system. We're looking at the up and down system, the horizontal, lines that are going through. And so 3 that I could really put together or mention are the abdominal seam, the spine, and the hara line. And they're all the same with what they do. It's just each one deals with a different level, right? Or a different function of a certain type of system. And since we have mental systems, and we have energy systems, and we have emotional systems, and we have physical systems. So we have all kinds of different kind of multifaceted systems, and that they are all attached into the 64 layers, or, the 64 condo building, or the 64 level dimensions, or whatever planes, energy planes. And one time I was working on someone, and they were having severe problems with their liver. And at this point in time, this person had had 350 energies, beings, entities, whatever you want to call it, that were responsible for the liver system. And so even transpiring into the physical liver working well. So ended up having to communicate with these different energies to actually, go down the timeline ropes, or, go out into the different rooms to try to figure out what was ultimately going on with the liver. And the other thing too is, just because you have this kind of healing done doesn't always mean that you are going to, say, heal your sick liver. But it will assist you in healing, other issues. Sometimes it just depends. You have to kind of see how it's going to play out, and then take you to the places to actually heal a lot of that stuff. But I have worked on people who have, and died from their illnesses, and a lot of it was because they couldn't put the connections together, and they couldn't ultimately allow themselves to heal, because whatever they had felt guilt for, it was almost like they were punishing themselves to death, right? Which is unnecessary. I mean, how long? And Miguel Ruiz always talks about in the 4 Agreements that, animals don't punish themselves, right? The incident happens, they did what they needed to do, and then that's it, and then it's over with. Where humans, will punish themselves over and over and over again, thousands and thousands of times. And, I love also too, Abraham Hicks talks about, so these are reasons why you don't heal, right? And why no matter what you try, you may not be able to actually heal what ultimately probably is going to cause your physical death. And Esther Hicks always says, croak. I love that, when the Abraham's talking, and Abraham says, when you croak, you'll finally, to death do us part, which basically means that you just keep on doing the same things, over and over again until you finally die. And then, in some cases, you're finally able to let go of it. So, anyway, so, yeah. So, we're dealing with these, different. And another thing too, we can talk about, and eventually I'll get to this cleaning of the hara line, because it's kind of an important thing. It can really help to unblock spinal blocks and spinal channel issues, to helping with the organs, and also can help with just a lot of different stuff, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, by cleaning your hara line. And it's not that hard, and we'll run through that when we come back. But it looks like we're headed to a commercial in just less than 1 minute. So this is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And I'm the host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. And today we were supposed to have Jordan Maxwell on, and we're not really sure what happened to him, but we're sending him really good energy today to make sure that he's okay and safe and things are good in his world. And we'll be back. 4 minutes.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
From the astral realms to the physical plane, the halls of power to the walls of home, the multiverse to the innerverse, all will be haunted by the ghost in the machine. I am Steve Zerloff, the ghost in the machine. Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B. Exclusively here on Revolution.Radio.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, fingers and or toes often go cold, arms and or legs often go to sleep, sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe, short walks cause cramping or pains in legs, memory is not as good as it used to be, ankles swell late in the day, chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey everybody, it is the return of Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff for the second hour, and I am a guest list, but that's all right. Sometimes there's just other things to talk about, and we are talking about some of the work that I've done with my teachers, and also we're going to go kind of more in depth with the abdominal seam, the hara line, and the spine. Which work together and they work separately. And there's probably some other stuff in there that I haven't looked at. Okay. All right. So we've talked kind of about the abdominal seam and the hara line and, what it looks like in the first hour. And this is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show in Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And you can find me by going to the schedule on the webpage and clicking on Studio A, scrolling down to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Click on the B, and there's a bio and also contact information there if you would like to contact me. While you're there, check out our funding page because we are listener supported, and see if there's a way that you can, help out, keeping us going and thriving. All right. I'm going to go into ways to kind of clean up these areas and help. So let's talk about, let's just talk about like the spinal system. The spine is a hydraulic pump. When you're young, before you have your first trauma can be emotional, mental, physical, or spiritual. Usually it's some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder. And what happens before that is your tailbone will actually shift from one side to the other, like about every hour. So it'll go back and forth, not fast, but this hour it's kind of cocked this way, and then it'll cock the other way. And so what can happen is the cerebral fluid that is actually being pumped up the spine and constantly pressurized by the hydraulic spinal pump system gets broken, and then the fluid, obviously gets a little bit off. So the engine starts running a little bit rough as soon as there is a post-traumatic stress disorder moment. So how would the spine and the spinal fluid, affect us mentally? Well, we would not have mental clarity, not be able to think, probably be a little bit more daydreamy, not really being able to be fully conscious. You would definitely have some vision problems, maybe even hearing problems, probably have jaw issues because of the tension that would be created in the body, would show up probably in the jaw. And usually as it starts to kind of break down, you have tendencies towards dizziness, not feeling, good on your feet. And then there could be a lot of other emotional things. And that's usually the breakdown point, right? That starts the breaking down of the physical system, is once the hydraulic pump, meets its first trigger and it's not assisted, in stabilizing or staying open, it starts the path of degeneration, basically. So emotionally, keywords with the spinal system, that would come about would be, fatigue, pain, not being mentally clear, maybe even not being able to control your emotions, like you're just emotional, or maybe you're like zombied out. Might have headaches. Yeah, a lot of those kinds of issues come to mind. And also too, like it would be like the same kind of function. So, the spinal system starts to collapse, and you might have something like chronic fatigue, right? And then as the spinal channel collapses, more and more, then the chronic fatigue goes to fibromyalgia. And then the fibromyalgia down the road turns into lupus or MS. And then, once that happens, then you start to have the neurological systems collapse, which, help to take care of the muscles and the way the muscles move and the triggers. And so you can see like how each step of the collapse of the spine after the first one would, send you more and more into deeper and deeper disease states towards death. And so that's kind of like with the spine and how it relates. So mentally, if you're pressurized and your skull wasn't working properly with your brain because your spine was off, it would cause more and more restriction in your spine as time went on, which would accelerate the disease into another level. Yeah. So emotionally, with the spinal stuff, emotionally would come to mind exhaustion, tired, fatigue, foggy, depressed, emotional, sad, sorrow, unhappiness. And then physically, we talked about the different kinds of accelerations of disease that, could happen. And then I'm just thinking, and spiritually, you just would be disconnected. And also, because your, spinal channel and your abdominal scene, your hara line, they're all also, the things that come off of those are the chakra systems and energy bodies, and the chakra systems all correlate to different organs, and they also help to generate the power for those organs. So you can see if all these different, straight line systems collapse, that, all of the other systems on the, up the 64, levels are not going to work as well, and it could be lights out on certain parts in your own 64 level field. One of the things that my teacher told me, she said that our energy bodies, 64 layers or planes, would extend out past the sun. She said, so, when people sense us in their space, part of our energy body could be in China. I'm standing in Reno, Nevada, but part of my energy body could actually, my energy system, the energy body's smaller, but the energy system could extend out, into places like China. So, yeah, you could always be in other people's spaces here. There's no way to get out of other space. But the key is that you learn how not to project your stuff onto other people, or and to keep your certain types of energies to yourself, and then that way it goes a long way to waiving other people's space, right? And then that way you're not feeding off their energy, they're feeding off their space. Okay, so hara line. All right, well, the way that I see the hara line is the two-way communication. So it's really important to keep it clean in order to get all the information, whether you're conscious of it or not, through the two-way radio system that is between, where you're standing and, in the cosmos somewhere. and just bringing that energy down through you or up, either way, or meeting it, somewhere in the middle. But it's important to keep that hara line clean because it keeps the information flowing down through the brain, which is the hard drive of the physical system, and, deals with a lot of also the energy systems and stuff like that. So you want to make sure and keep it open so that you don't have lights out on a certain level, and you can continue to upgrade your systems by the hara line channel, being open. So what can happen to the abdominal seam? Well, it can be cut through, by cesarean. It can open up, if you're really heavy, and actually the fat push through the abdominal seam. So the abdominal seam isn't holding everything together. And the abdominal seam also deals with the energetics. A lot of the ancient shaman and sorcerer people talk a lot about the body needing to be lean and muscular, but also supple and smooth at the same time, and flexible, in order to hold, excuse me, in order to hold, to be able to, the power that you're generating in your daily life, to be able to hold it into your abdominal area. They talk a lot about how the abdominal area is usually the first area that's depleted of energy. And the reason why organs start to decay and why the lower part of the spine starts to kind of, get compressions in it and collapse is due to a lot of the energy that ends up leaving through post-traumatic stress events, which can happen mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, and they can be very subtle, where the power leaks out of the center. And that's why, like in a lot of these ancient practices, that their huge focus is on the physical body and the strengthening of the physical body, especially strengthening that inner core in order to be strong and to be able to keep that energy into those areas. And, in the last few years, we have people like, Bruce Lipton, who talk a lot about the flight or fight and how, our mind perceive things. And it's scientifically proven that when we go into flight or fight, or we're in constant Stockholm syndrome, or we're in constant post-traumatic stress disorder syndrome, and we have a lot of tension and stress because we can't break free. What happens is like all the blood flow will go to the legs and the arms. It'll actually leave the brain, leave the torso, and head to the legs and arms to start to defend ourselves. So it starts to move, our body starts to move into a military reactive state against the world. And we lose the blood flow in the torso and the brain. And when we do that, we can't think anymore. And then also all the organs in the body are not getting the nutrient and the oxygen and the water, to them in order to keep all of our systems going. So there is kind of when we're talking about the physical, we're also talking about like the energy and how it all works there in the abdominal area, or, in the area of the abdominal seam, which would be kind of more on the front part, and then the spine would be on the back. And the hara line kind of drives right between them. So when you have blood flow, because you're not stressed out, and mind you, we were not designed to do flight or fight, which is fight, freeze, or run. That's a very primitive switch, that we have. But in this world, a lot of the ways in which we, are living our life and our journeys, we're in constant stressful states. So we're in constant flight or fight. And it's so chronic that, our parents learned to be that way, or developed to be that way through war, through starvation, through financial hardship, through alcohol, drugs, abuse, prevalent abuse. And so it becomes hereditary that we're like in chronic states of chemistry, of flight and fight. It was only meant to be like, to run from that lion. Oh, there's a lion. Okay, all the blood go to, the limbs and take off and try to outrun that lion and stay alive. And so we're living like that in constant states in the outside world. This is how we chronically live our life. And that means, all the energy has escaped the abdominal area. The spine is collapsing. The hara line is clogged. The abdominal seam has definitely collapsed or has been majorly distorted. And then on top of it, we don't have blood flow in the torso, and we don't have blood flow in the brain. So it means we literally can't think. And it means that we literally are fatigued and in flight or fight and in combat mode. So a lot of what they would have called like magical passes, or that the shamans and sorcerers of ancient times focused in on, or certain physical practices that aligned all of this and strengthened it all and helped us to generate power. Because, without properly generating power, you will not be able to have, longevity. You will die, and you will die probably years, maybe in some cases, 50 years sooner than you should have, because you're not generating power back into your systems, and all your systems are collapsing. Okay, so I'm thinking we'll do just like a little hara line visualization out there. I'm going to be putting a YouTube video together just specifically talk about the abdominal seam and the spine, and mostly just kind of like a physical, because there's the video on my YouTube channel, but definitely want to talk about this again. All right, so we're going to do a hara line cleanse. Like I said before, I've never seen one that's been broken or damaged. So I see a lot of that on the internet when I have kind of done research kind of on what the mass people are talking about and what they're presenting into, the alternative stream as far as the hara line. So it's more bendy, it's more fluxing. Like I said, it usually looks like, it's gotten clogged with, leaf debris or whatever else. I mean, I kind of liken the hara line to a gutter system, and that, our life has lots of storms in it, and stuff just gets kind of clogged into that that drainage system, right? The two-way system going up and down, kind of a thing. If you kind of need to think about it more in a gutter way, you can always lay down on the ground, and you could be parallel with, gutters that run around the roof, and that way you can kind of, clean it out more like a gutter in that direction. Boy, the animals are just crazy while I've been on the show. Everybody was super nice. And then like the cats went totally crazy in the house. My dog went totally crazy in the house. And now in the yard down below, because now I'm living in the city, right? I was living out in the desert, but now I'm in the city. And so now these dogs are just barking like crazy at the house right next door. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, all right, back to the hara line. Must be hitting a nerve or something with the energy field. Distractions. They're trying to distract me. All right, so this is the way that I look at it. So I'm going to take a couple minutes here, and breathe and just kind of relax and just try to get a sense of your hara line. running through like a channel from, take it from wherever you want in the cosmos or right above your head or however you want to look at it. And it runs through the center of your head, through the center of your body. Your abdominal seam is on the front. Your spine is on the back. Somewhere in between that, it runs all the way through, down through like your tailbone and then down into the ground. It is your biological and energetic acupuncture needle. So you definitely want to keep it clean. And I like to spend quite a bit of time, looking at what my hara line or, when I'm working with other people, what their hara line, may be doing. And this is the other thing too, is there's a couple different things. There's a couple of different things, that we may need to consider. When I first started doing any practices that I learned with my teacher back, when I was 23, the medicine, Lakota Sioux medicine woman teacher, her whole thing was that we should always do these practices for 30 days straight, minimum, and then pop in and out and check up on them here and there, right? But we have to stick to it for a minimum of 30 days. And so we have these weird laws in this reality, right, that govern. For example, it takes 21 days to create a habit. And so you have to keep the practice going for more than 21 days in order to break the habit. And what happened might be when you first start working on your hara line is that you have constant periods where you go in there and not a lot has changed. Or you go in there and it's completely blocked with something else. Or only half of it is blocked up again. Or, this part's blocked up again. So that's why we have to keep going in there for 30 days. So making it like a quick practice that you do in the course of your life for 30 days minimum. And any kind of practice that you do should, you should do for at least 30, be committed to it for 30 days, for such and such period of time. Once you get the hara line, kind of idea down and you get it pretty much cleaned, after 30 days, maybe check in with it once a year, and see where it's at. If you've gone through a really stressful period in your life, maybe you want to go in there, a lot during that period of time. Then things aren't as stressful, then not have to worry about it so much. So you have to keep going in there until it energetically stabilizes. And you may have a lot of just different stuff that is coming down the pike that needs to be cleaned out, or coming up the pike that needs to be cleaned out. So you want to just make sure and go in there and take care of it. And one thing that I've learned about the hara line is that it's pretty much indestructible. Out of all the things that we have going on in our multifaceted beings, the hara line probably more so than anything is indestructible. It just gets clogged and it has to be cleaned out. But by cleaning out the hara line, we can help ourselves on multiple levels of, health and longevity because of the energy transmissions that are going through. And these are downloads. And so if our hara line's blocked, we're not getting the next download that our brain needs, because our brain is the hard drive and it runs all of, our systems. And if the brain is disconnected, with any part of the body, because we are having some kind of system collapse, and usually it goes back a while. Usually in America, the number one system collapse, the start of the system collapse is definitely birth, especially birth in a hospital, birth, in a very trauma atmosphere, usually is these days the first indication of lateralization, which is the first damage to the spine that starts the collapse system. And I think because, medicine, especially with birthing, is just getting more and more trauma-based. You start to see kids that have, chronic diseases at such a young age because, they've already been lateralized and damaged with a post-traumatic stress, type of event. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at the hara line, and this is the other thing too. Animals have hara lines, and trees have hara lines, and plants have hara lines, and you can, once you kind of get, your legs underneath it of cleaning a hara line, you can gently, practice on cleaning on the hara lines of other people. So say, for example, you have a sick tree in your yard. Maybe you can help it by checking its hara line and just seeing, if it's clogged or if the hara line needs to be cleaned out, or, going in and doing like a little energy check just to see, if that's something that needs to be done or not. And then, always asking permission to, clean the hara line, ask your animals or the tree or whatever else that seems to need, like a hara line fix. People that are sick or, that have dementia or, have other kind of chronic things, hara line cleaning could be pretty helpful for them, and maybe even, teaching them how to clean their hara line. All right. So the way I'm going to kind of do this is I'm going to do it by going into my own hara line. And then, we're going to talk about kind of, what I see. So usually what I do when I go into my own hara line is that I like to travel. I like to start at the top of my hara line, and I like to see, making sure that it's all open up there, right? And that there's nothing sitting on top or closing it off. And also I like to put a filter on there, right, on the top of my hara line. I like to, you can see it as, the top of the hara line, and it's open. And that, I like to put a filter on there. And I think that the new filter that I'm going to, because the one that's on there is pretty dirty. So I'm going to go in and look at putting in a one that has bigger screen, has bigger holes in it. And I think I'm going to do gold, and I'm going to do titanium. And so I'm just going to graft a new screen, and I'm going to graft it into a medicine wheel. So it's a whole square screen that I'm putting over. Well, hara line is kind of circular, so kind of putting it on top, and it's going to have a medicine wheel with the 4 directions in it. So that's going to be the look of the screen. And I think the openings of the screen we're going to have will be about 1.5 inches in diameter across it. And then we're going to go ahead and infuse it with the titanium and the gold. And so titanium, and then I'm doing gold coating. And so that's going to be the new filter. I had to take the old filter off because it had a lot of stuff on it. It looked like a lot of barnacles. It had captured a lot of probably psychic attacks. Kind of looks like it. And so got that one removed, got the new one built, and putting the new one on top. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down the hara line, and I'm going to take a look. And it looks like there's some cloggage here. And it looks kind of like, I kind of look at things, like leaves, kind of some kind of solid matter, looks like that, like you'd see in a drain that you'd have to call in a plumber to like clean out the drain, like a big clog. So I have a clog here, and so I'm just going to kind of work on clogging it. Sometimes, the best method is to reach in and pull out and throw out, because sometimes it's not very successful, depending on how many clogs you have in your hara line. It's not very successful to try to push the stuff down. So sometimes it's easier to pull it out. And the other thing too, for new people that are doing this kind of work, I have a jar that I have beings that bring in for me. And it's like a big jar, and it has a really good lid that seals on it. And so as I'm taking this stuff out, literally using my hand to pull out the clogs. I put it into the jar, the glass jar, and I pull it out of my hara line, these clogs. And I go ahead and the other thing too, it doesn't really matter what it is. Like my grandfather used to say, are you writing a novel? Do you need that information? Are you writing a novel? And I would say yes. And he'd say, well, leave that chapter out. All right. So just go ahead and take out whatever is like clogging the area. The hara line, I think, a really good color. And then I put it in the glass jar. And once I get a certain, I get all that I can get out. Sometimes you can't get it all out. So you just kind of keep working with it. And eventually you will. Sometimes some of this comes back over and over and over again. So I just keep filling the glass jar until it's pretty full, or I get, that area done, and then I put the lid on it, and then they'll take it away, and they'll dispose of it in a good way, in a right way. So it doesn't do any harm to anyone else or anything else, right? So always want it being taken away in a good way and being transmuted, in a good way. All right, so we're just going to keep on working with the hara line. So I'm just going to go down. It's been a while since I've been in here in my own hara line taking a look around. And then I'm noticing there's like a hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to travel down through that hole. And I'm noticing that it's like a little hole on the side. And it looks like it's kind of, and it's interesting because I have been having a little bit of cramping in my side there between the third and the second chakra. So I'm just taking a look. And so it looks like I don't know if the hara line's leaking. That's not really what it looks like. But anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and seal that hole up. Yeah, just to make sure. So I'm just going to go ahead and seal it up, fuse it all back together perfectly. So a really good color that your hara line should be would be kind of like a really light, it would be like white with a tint of light turquoise and that like a little shimmer of violet. That is always a really good color for the hara line. So it's really important to kind of work on looking at your whole hara line and just seeing, that it's mostly white with, light turquoise, and like a shimmer of violet, in it and all the way down. And of course you choose it to be any kind of color you want. You can try different colors and see how, you feel. You can go ahead and go in there and just kind of reprogram the coloring, or, start working on reprogramming. Maybe sometimes you might not be able to see a lot of this, or feel it, or you're going to see it or feel it on different kinds of levels as you're working with the hara line. Don't give up. Keep working with it until you can get it to change, into a certain kind of color and hold that color. Like I said, if you're going to commit to a shamanism type practice, you should commit to it for at least like 30 days minimum. All right, so I got that hole healed, and my hara line's looking really good, actually, by the way. It's got that white with, the turquoise and the shimmering violet, so I'm good with that. And so I just want to make sure that I'm also looking at it to make sure that it's consistent all the way up and down, and that the shape is consistent all the way up and down. Yeah. And there's a shifting that happens once the hara line hits your tailbone area. It pulls around like a circular gutter off the wall. So you would have, the lay down gutter, and then you have those wall gutters that attach to the roof gutters, and that they come down to the ground, and then the water and whatever else debris comes out onto the ground. Well, your hara line almost does the same thing. Once it gets down, it comes out the pelvic floor. It actually turns towards your back, flows that way for a few inches, and then comes down like a spigot coming down the wall, but it's attached to that gutter. I don't know if you can get that visual, but that's kind of like what it does. So what happens is once it reaches that pelvic bone and then it has that turn in it, that's the area that gets really, really clogged. And I mean, we can tell in society about how weird the whole sex stuff is, or the power and control, and how that whole, chakra even down there is a really primitive place. And so, the hara line getting clogged there could be, difficult on us. It could cause a lot of primitive stress, and it could cause a lot of, flight or fight, and also, power struggles. And especially if we're clogged, it's going to cause people trying to, create power struggles and control us, right? Because our energy is not flowing, and we're not in the two-way radio. So we're not confident within ourselves, right? We're not standing in our power. We're not standing in our own balance in our wheel. And the hara line is indicating that because there's a big clog. All right, so I'm still kind of up before I go down into that area. And so I'm just looking. And so there's like some weird kind of black, I'm going to call it a black goo. I've got a little bit kind of leaking in. And so I want to make sure and go ahead. And so I use kind of like the spirit vacuum. So I'm just going to put some funny things that are out there so people can kind of think about some of the things that they could do. And, the thing is like, once you go in there, you can use like things physically, you can create them, right? In that world where you're doing energetic healing. And so whatever kind of tools you need, you can make those tools in your dreaming realities, and right now I'm talking a lot about dreaming medicine, which means that we're going into like the second attention. We're developing the second attention. We're developing the third attention to go in and work on the hara line on a different kind of energy plane, a dreaming plane. So, if you need tools, in there, you can look at the physical world around you at the type of tools and devices you have, and then you can make something in that, in your dreaming world, to help you heal your hara line. So what I'm going to do is I like to use a spirit vacuum. And the spirit vacuum is like the glass jar, but it actually sucks stuff up, and I can use the little fine-tuned nozzle to get right into wherever I want and vacuum stuff up, and it goes up the vacuum and it goes into another glass jar. The only difference is like I'm not scooping and putting into the jar, but I have a vacuum that's sucking up the areas that's going to be really hard for me to get into and scoop out. All right, so I've got my little vacuum attachment. I put the right attachment on there that I want, and I'm going to go ahead and vacuum up some of this energy that looks a little like black energy, and it's a little gooey and it's sticky. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get in there, and I'm going to just go ahead and vacuum it up. And the same thing, is that you want all this to go to a good place in a good way, and to be transmuted into something good, and that you don't want to contaminate other people, and you don't want to contaminate other people's spaces. It's not really good. Same as projecting, you can contaminate other people's places where they live, and you can contaminate them. All right, and I think I've just about got it. There's a couple spots that are hanging, but that's all right. I got the bulk of them anyway. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and send that vacuum out and put it into a good space. And that, my helpers will, energies will transmute it into something that's good and usable. Let's see. And so I have something, and then what they're telling me is like the word that's coming from the stream is a catch tray. So for some reason, part of my hara line is developed into a catch tray. And the thing is, like, I don't really need a catch tray. You want to have, your hara line needs to be smooth, like the walls of it are smooth. So all the energy and information is slip sliding perfectly, just like a cable, electrical cable. That cable is attached at the top to the infinite, the creator, the great computer in the sky, the stream, whatever you want to call it, the cosmos. And then the other side of it is plugged into the ground, right? It goes through you and is like plugged in. So it should be smooth. It shouldn't be, any holes, shouldn't, for the most part, have a catch tray or have rough spots where things can get stuck and attached, right? This is the only place that we really want to stay non-stuck, non-clogged, and non-attached. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear out this catch tray. And so hold on a second. I'm trying to get in there and pay attention to it so that I can see what I have going on in that catch tray. And it looks like something's been fixed in there, like as a solid tray. So I'm actually going to pop it out and I'm going to actually remove it out. And then kind of smoothen and heal it all up and get it shaped back right, in congruency with the rest of the hara line. And so, I've got another piece of it right here. So I'm just kind of asking the field or the energy field, what's the deal with the catch-22 tray? Or the catch tray. And so one of the things they're saying is that there's been some attachments, right, that have come back from the past. So I'm going to ask to see what those are. So I'm going to travel to that timeline and I'm just going to take a look at what those attachments are from the past and why I needed a catch tray. And so I'm on, that level, and I'm looking around on that floor just to kind of see down that rope timeline. And it looks like there's some kind of weird old belief system there about being in the right time at the right place. So there's a catch tray in my hara line because for some reason somebody taught me, or some kind of belief that came in, part of the laws here is I have to be in the right place at the right time for something to happen. And so I had to put a catch tray in there because basically I'm never in the right place at the right time. So it's like a net trying to catch it just in case it comes by. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and finish, removing that out of there, because it doesn't really matter if I'm in the right place at the right time. The only thing that really matters is that, my hara line is streamlined, it's smooth, the energy, I'm connecting up to the energy flows through the top and the bottom, and they're all co-mingling, and they're bringing different information and data together and creating new downloads of system operations into the brain, so that my body can heal and my mind can heal and I can heal emotionally and physically. So we just want to remove all that kind of stuff. Okay, so now we're going to continue down. And I'm coming around that area where it shifts the hara line by the pubic bone. It starts to go to the back and then come down. And let's see. Yeah. Okay, so we should probably talk about we get these kind of energy serpents, and we definitely get them in our hara line, and we definitely get them in our spine. In the spinal energy, we get what are called serpent type forms and energy forms. And some of them we're born with, and then some of them come in as programming, you know, after we're born. So one of the things that I see is that I have some kind of a serpent ely thing, maybe like a giant parasite that's not totally blocking the area, and it can't really move up higher because of the turn in the hara line. So it's swimming, and it's constantly swimming and trying to make it up. So this is like the serpent or an energy parasite kind of a thing that has to be, let's just say, you know, cleaned out. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my vacuum, and I'm just going to go ahead and clean out these energy forms for sure. Yep. And we're just going to get rid of them and go ahead and clean that out. Okay, so that's out of there. And it's really important to kind of get rid of those energy parasites or serpents out of your hara line, because eventually, just like tapeworms in the physical body, they'll grow in mass and they'll totally block an area. I mean, the largest tapeworm, 22 pounds, came out of like a 400-pound lady. She had a colon blockage, and when they went in there, they couldn't believe like how big this tapeworm was. 22 pounds. Yeah, unbelievable. So you get those kinds of things in your energy field too. So they have to be, you know, taken out and, you know, removed and cleaned up, and, you know, not to get attached, you know, either way. Sometimes you just got to start going in it with your hara line and just working around and checking it out for a while before you kind of get a sense of maybe, you know, what belongs, what doesn't belong, and how to, you know, help it in a good way, how to help yourself in a good way. All right, so we're coming down to the wire here, so of the show coming to an end. So I just want to make sure and get down and finish cleaning the hara line. And then the rest of it looks pretty good. On my side, on my end, on my hara line. One of the things I'm noticing, though, is there's a lift off the ground and there's a separation between the ground. So let me look into why my hara line is unplugged or pulled off. I just want to go ahead and check that out. Okay, so one of the things that I'm hearing is the chemtrails, as I've got a little bit of chemtrail effect that's going on, that's doing something with my hara line. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to go back to the top of the screen that I put on, you know, kind of the top of where my hara line starts with the cosmos connection. And I'm actually going to put some stuff on there to help filter out and collect so it doesn't come down into my hara line energy communication. This might have something to do with nanoparticles. And so I'm going to have a catch-all put on that filter that catches a lot of that stuff out of there. And now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to run, I'm going to gear up a program, and I'm going to run the program through my whole body, my energy system, my hara line, and everything. And I'm going to clean out whatever I can clean out, whatever can be cleaned out. So I'm just going to run a quick energy software system. And to me, this looks like a scanner coming down through my energy bodies, my hara line, through all my cells, bones, and everything. And then it just comes down, and it takes a while to clean all the systems out. check and clean all of it out, and reset it as well. Okay, so that's done. So let me see if we can actually reconnect back down to the earth, reconnect the hara line. All right. And so that looks good. It looks good. So where I'm all clean. All right. And I didn't really know how else to maybe teach people how to clear their hara line. But maybe going through cleaning my own hara line today could give you some ideas and some thoughts and some practice. And that you could go from there. So trying to, spend some time educating people and helping them to heal and put forth. One of the things I always tell people working with this kinds of medicine, like this hara line work, is that visualization for it doesn't come naturally. You have to sometimes build yourself up. And in some cases, you just have to fake it till you make it. You have to just keep going in and looking at it. And, it goes back to the story of that shaman and what the bleep do we know. The shaman goes out of the tribe or the medicine man on the East Coast, and he noticed that there's changes in the ocean and there's weird water anomalies out there, and he can't see what's causing it. So he goes and gets all of his, belongings and goods, and he sits up on top of that hill for weeks and weeks and weeks and months on end until one day he sees it. And there are these big ships out there in the water that are causing the anomaly. So even people that are well versed and well educated and well practiced in arts of awareness, we're going to call them attention arts, where you are going to have to hold your focus for a long period of time, and paying attention physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, until you can put it all together, right? And you can operate in that virtual system. Because that's really what you're building, is you're building your own virtual system and operating in that virtual system. And then when you work on other people, you're bringing them into your virtual system to help them and work on them. So anyway, we've got about 3 minutes till we go to promos, and it's the end of the show. And this has been the second hour of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And I'm your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. And I'm here every Saturday so far, and from 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to contact me, you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can click on schedule, choose schedule or studio, choose the Studio A, scroll down to 1 p.m. Eastern to the B, click on the B. You'll find some information about me and also contact information. Also, you can check out my YouTube channel, Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project YouTube channel. Let's see what else. And also, check out the playlist. I put a lot of different stuff that I'm interested in the playlist, as well as, putting together all kinds of pretty primitive videos. I don't have a lot of exceptional, editing and movie skills. So my videos are on the fly, and sometimes I look pretty scary. So just to warn you, not doing the do, and I don't wear bling. And sometimes, it's kind of sketchy whether I've showered or not. And I've been fighting a cold. Well, actually, I fought the cold and won, so I'm on the other side of it. All right, so anyway, it looks like about 1 minute until I go off the air and your next host comes on. And it's been a pleasure. Hopefully you've gained something out of what I had to offer today. And even if you have no experience out there with doing energetic medicine or creating your own virtual healing studio, walking the 64, floors of your condo building or somebody else's condo building. Hopefully I've given you some information that you can use and take on your journey with you and adapt. And remember, the work will morph into what you morph it into. You know, my teacher, she used to always tell me that I will take her work and everybody else's work, and I will make it even more magnificent than it was before, and make it and create it into my own work and my own medicine. So anyway, bye. See you next week.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Welcome to Revolution Radio, where you, the listeners, are in charge. Here at Revolution Radio, we present 48 broadcast hours of news and information each and every day. Revolution Radio never sleeps. Revolution Radio is worldwide and borderless information. Revolution Radio is also commercial-free. Revolution Radio is supported 100% by you, the listeners. And that's why we appeal to you to donate and support this station and its expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, which you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank or all